Hi guys, welcome back to another ACT Tech Talk. We're here again with Mr. Justin and myself, Cameron, and we're going to be talking about something that concerns all of you.
Passwords.
Passwords. How good are they? Are they safe? How to crack passwords?
Kind of.
So from a cybersecurity perspective, I deal with the password cracking and how to bypass passwords if possible, whereas Justin deals with more of how do passwords work and what they really do in the system.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the biggest things, like everyone knows, you need some sort of, if you want to keep something secure, you need some sort of key, right? And in technology, the key is the password, right? There's a lot of new kinds of technology, new kinds of ways to log on to different services, whether it be your email or the cloud or whatever. It all boils down to some form of password, whether it be a password that you make up or a password that a computer makes up, and it's bigger gobbledygook.
Right. From what I understand about the way certain password exchanges or key exchanges work, there could be a public key and a private key that are exchanged in a safe manner. So you have your own private key, but if someone wants to connect with you or verify something, they can use your public key.
Yeah, that's a public key cryptography. That's a form of, you have two different numbers. You actually generate both of them, and you can publicly sign things and have other people encrypt things for you only.
So that makes sense. When I've downloaded some software, sometimes it'll have like a long code at the bottom, and it'll say like PGP something, and that's how you can use to verify the software is from the authentic original sender?
Yes. Yes, and if you trust this person and you trust that that key represents that person, then anything that verifies via that key, that's key signature, is more than likely from that person. There is a vanishingly small chance that it is not, but you know, as you probably know, it is very, very difficult to crack one of these.
Yes, yes. So nowadays, it's getting easier with the rise of faster processors. The thing is, we use graphics processors because they can literally chuck data as fast as possible with little or no error correction when we're doing these password breaking things.
And it can also do multiple passes at once, multiple things at one time. Yeah.
With what they call CUDA cores. The more CUDA cores, the more multiple attacks or multiple password cracking attempts it can do. Passwords, it seems, only come to the forefront, or passwords themselves only seem to come to the forefront when we got our password broken into, or someone steals our passwords. But there's passwords being used all around us.
Yes.
Bluetooth uses a certain kind of encryption that switches a password. When you move from one cell tower to another cell tower, they have to hand off to another person or to another tower. So there's passwords all around us.
All around us. Right.
Do you have any good guidelines for passwords?
I mean, so for the most part, you don't have to worry about a lot of the Bluetooth and the cell tower stuff. Your providers handle that for you. But when you are making a password for yourself for anything that you want to do, I know a lot of people do kind of a tiered system, right? Where you have basically simple passwords for anything that you don't care about, right? You have to sign up for a dumb newsletter on a website so you can read a cool article.
Yeah.
Use one of those dumb passwords, right? Then you might use like a more complicated password for like your email or something like that, and then your most complicated and biggest passwords for something very private like your bank information.
Right.
And a very easy way to make, I mean, the first one kind of doesn't matter what you do, but for the other two, a really nice way to make these passwords is to come up with a phrase that you instinctively recognize, you know, and you can memorize.
So like a passphrase instead of a password.
Yes, it is a lot of people call it a passphrase. It boils down to the same thing, right? But it is a longer password, right? And then interspersed with that, you can do what some people know is known as leet speak, so where you switch out the letter A for the number 4 or the letter S for the number 5.
I've seen the cool kids doing that.
Yeah, some cool kids do that. Some tryhards do that too.
So when we're talking about passwords and the methodology of it, I've also heard that it's likely not your bank that had the password stolen from it, but some other site where you use the same password and they might have gotten compromised.
Yes.
Is there anything that a site can do to prevent attackers from compromising their passwords?
So there's a couple of things that a site can do to prevent people from breaking into their stuff, and that has to do with the on-site security. But there is always the chance that someone, even on the inside, can take those passwords, can get that file, and then walk it out the doors, right? And there's really not a whole lot you can do about that.
Now, are you familiar with the term called password salting?
Yes, I
Or
am.
hash salting?
Mm-hmm. So that's the thing that a lot of people do, a lot of companies do, is what they'll do is they don't actually have a plain text version of your password. So it's not like if your password is password123, awesome password, right? I mean, it's a capital letter, password, and then a couple of numbers, you're all good. But they don't actually have that just in plain text. What they'll do is they'll hash it. They'll put it through a special mathematical function, which has a vanishingly small chance of having two of the same number pop out at the other end. And then when it goes through that, right, it's this basically random gobbledygook of numbers. And you can't really go from that random gobbledygook of numbers to your original password.
So hashing is very similar to encryption,
Yes.
but from what I understand, hashing is a one-way function.
It is a one-way function.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the only way to unhash or crack the hash is to compare hundreds of thousands of possibilities and hash those and see if they match the same hash.
Yeah, you're basically walking through and checking every single combination, which is why a lot of times longer passwords are better. Not just any long password though, because if you just use words, right, if you just use a passphrase with only words, that is not always very good because people will also use what's known as a dictionary attack, where they'll start using words and generating random phrases.
So in the cybersecurity world, those who are doing defensive penetration testing and things, dictionaries are their power. There's many dictionaries out there, 8 terabytes, 10 terabytes, and there's also dictionary generators like a program called Crunch. The problem is, if you really want to get every exhaustive possibility between one character and 14 characters, upper, lower, mixed, you could be looking at petabytes of data.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also programs like a program called Cups, not to be confused with a printer server, but you can enter, it's a Facebook password crack generator. So you enter the person's first name, last name, birthday, pets, favorite color. You basically feed it all the information, spouse, kids, and then it'll come up with a more realistic list of passwords that you can use against you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually a thing that a lot of people will forget is that data about themselves, right? Like my dog's name is Fido and my birthday is in January, right? And so using Fido January or Fido01 or Fido1, those might be legitimate passwords for me.
Right, and with the rise of those people search sites out there, an attacker could pay a subscription for $20 a month and find out absolutely everything, past addresses, more than you could probably even remember.
Yes.
So a personal experience of mine is Wi-Fi cracking. It's important to have a secure password on your Wi-Fi, but actually it's becoming less important nowadays. We are on WPA3, which is almost comparable to something they call Radius security, which actually uses a separate server to authenticate your passwords. WPA3 is very secure. There's not any current programs that can break it that I'm aware of. But then rolling back to 2003, 2004, when WEP, a different type of security, was involved, you can literally have your computer sitting next to the traffic source, the modem of whatever you're trying to attack, and once you captured 10,000 what they call IVs, they're the password.
Different password. Yeah. The funny thing about that is WEP stands for Wired Equivalent Protocol. So they are suggesting with the name of that protocol that it is as good as if you were physically plugged in. So it doesn't matter. You would have to actually physically plug into the router, which obviously is not true.
Right. And sometimes it's not just the passwords that get attacked, but the methodology, the functions for how it takes your password in, and the people in the middle who see that.
Yes.
So if someone's monitoring a website traffic or has managed to get onto their domain or one of their servers, and they see the password pass through them, they can capture that and use that.
Yeah, there are a lot of very advanced attacks that most people shouldn't really worry about. But a lot of those attacks do involve actually watching processes on servers to see how long the password might be and what things might be going on with that. And so there's a lot of research and development into that to prevent those kinds of attacks from happening.
So you're familiar with Wireshark?
Yes.
So Wireshark is a network monitoring tool that you can use to capture all the data in your entire network. And about 10 years ago or so, there was a lot more sites just using HTTP login, just standard web login. And if you happen to be listening to a network on Wireshark at a coffee shop or somewhere an attacker might hang out, you can actually see in clear text what the submitted password is.
Now, can you do that today?
No. It got moved up once HTTPS came across and they used DigitalSecurity. The password gets encrypted. You could still catch that encrypted password and break it, but sites like YouTube and Facebook have made it so that they can't even see the entire block. It blocks out all the data, and you don't even see the transaction data.
Yeah, so a lot of these bigger websites, they've actually implemented methodologies on top of the baseline HTTPS security stuff so that it's even harder for attackers to find passwords or any other sensitive data.
So I'm going to bring up a personal case that I've had 2 or 3 times. I've had a young man, an older woman, and an older man all convinced that an attacker has access to their devices. They have access to their new devices, and no matter what they do, they can't get them away. And I would almost coin the term cyber paranoia.
Yes.
You know, despite being presented with realistic, logical, scientific things that show that it's not possible, they will still go throw their devices away and buy new ones and then feel the same way about that. What do we see a lot here? How do people get attacked?
Usually people get attacked by, what's it called? By a scam, right? That is one of the biggest things, is someone asking you for your password. Or someone saying, hey, in order to fix your computer, I need to log in. What is your password? Can you log me in, please? Can you do this for me? And honestly, that is way easier to do than for me to spend dozens of hours and hundreds of compute hours to try to crack a password. If I could just ask someone, hey, Cameron, what's your email address and password?
Right.
And he gives it to me, like, that's way easier than me trying to crack into your Gmail account.
And so in businesses, there's something called phishing. I'm sure you heard that term, where people will send these spam emails either saying that you owe Norton or you owe McAfee or you owe Geek Squad some amount. Please call and take care of the issue with them. Things like we saw, like the oil company that got hijacked, and a couple of the food chain supplies that got hijacked, they actually used a tactic called spear phishing. They knew who was in charge of their department. They took time to do the research to find their extension, everything. They found out the name of the IT person, and they said, hey, this is Bob from IT. We need to do some maintenance on your computer. What's your password?
Yeah, and so that is a targeted, directed attack.
Right.
Which people are going to fall for, right? Unfortunately, for something like that, that is a high-end, they are looking to make a lot of money type of attack. Right. Most regular people don't have to worry about that.
Well, and the thing is, these hackers all the times are hackers for hires. They may not be the actual attacker or the people that are going to use this kind of information. Oftentimes what happens is someone will breach a database using SQL injection and then put on the dark web an announcement that they have so many passwords for sale from such company, and give an example of a couple of them, and the passwords go to the highest bidder.
Yes.
To do whatever they want with them.
Whatever they want.
Same thing with credit cards. When people steal credit cards with scammers, it's not usually the person skimming that reduplicates it. They pass it on to part of the chain.
Yep.
Like that.
They just pass the number along, see what they can do with it, and if someone can do something, awesome.
So that happens
Not
on
awesome.
No, not awesome. That happens on a corporate level, and a lot of times in big businesses, and we try to let our businesses know. But here in Vero Beach, we're a retirement community. We have a lot of older folks who have built this country up to be great and done their time. And we see pop-up attacks.
Yes, that is one of the biggest things that we see quite often here, where a big pop-up will come up on the screen and it'll look really scary, saying, hey, Microsoft just detected something on your computer and you need to call this phone number to get this fixed, to get this situation resolved, right? And you call that phone number, and on the other end of the line is someone who is their entire job is to convince you that there is something wrong with your computer, but the whole thing is a scam. The whole thing is 100% a scam. They're just trying to get onto your computer so they can get your information, so that they can either steal your credit card information or get you to get $400 or $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 or $10,000 worth of whatever, and send it to them, wire it to them one way or another, and then they have your money.
So this whatever he's talking about oftentimes is gift cards, which we're located in a good spot next to Walmart across the street. We've got a Publix right down the way, and a lot of times customers will stop by us when they're on the way to get to the gift cards for those scammers, and we'll explain, hey, don't do it. They've been getting better. A lot of times people this week have been bringing them in. They didn't call the number, and we can just simply close the pop-up.
Yes.
You can hit Alt F4.
Or escape. Escape quite often works because it's usually a full browser window pop-up. It just takes over the full screen. You hit escape, it's the top left key on the keyboard, and that'll usually bring it down, and then you can just close the window. And if it says, hey, are you sure you want to leave this site? Yes, you are sure that you want to leave that site, because that is not a place you want to be, right?
For some reason, it reminds me, and I tell customers this, of the old Nigerian prince email scam. And it's almost like a reverse of that. Instead of saying, I'm a Nigerian prince, I've got mad money, send me some so I can send you some, they say, you've got a problem, send me money.
It is kind of the same thing.
But it is unfortunate that these guys are very intelligent, but with the way these countries are set up with their caste systems and everything, there's not a really good way to move up. They make more money doing this than doing a legitimate business.
Unfortunately, yes.
And I'm not saying be sympathetic towards the scammers, I'm just saying be aware of the situation.
Yeah.
Cool. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is kind of what we have going on in the background here. We have a hash generator and cracker up here where we created a short hash of the word I love you 36, right? And it's going to take, I think, what's the say remaining time? 25 minutes for that phrase, I love you 36, because it's all lowercase and it's using just two numbers. But if we were to do something like, what's a good one we could use?
Oh Lord, correct horse battery staple is probably in someone's just try this password, but
any kind of thing that's long, upper, lower, symbols, and numbers. So this guy right here has taught me a lot about key space. So when it comes to something that big, in order for the computer to have to try every single combination of number, letter, symbol, upper, lower, again and again and again, it really gets to an unrealistic...
Yeah, it's a thing in physics called entropy. There's a similar thing in computer science. The more characters, the more complex it is with uppercase, lowercase numbers, symbols, if the provider allows that, because some providers unfortunately do not. But having as many of those as possible and interspersing them, right, increases the potential combinations, right? Having just words makes it a little simple. They don't necessarily know you're using just words, but they can check that with a simple dictionary attempt, right? I love you 26, that's I love you 26, right? So they just have to check those three words and then those two numbers, and it's done.
So hackers are at a disadvantage though. They don't know what schema you're using. They just can get the general idea from social engineering, social media, and they also don't know where you break your numbers and put the numbers in. So I think let's wrap this up. And I guess the best thing I want to say is when they're making these passwords, we don't need to make them so complicated that's impossible to remember.
Yes.
But we need to make sure if they're going to be short, we can remember them and they're secure.
Yes. Remembering them and having them be secure is key. I know a lot of people use password managers. I personally don't like password managers because then I'm giving my passwords to someone else, and there is a high chance that I might forget those passwords.
There's a term for that. All your eggs in one basket.
Yes. And honestly, the best password manager I've seen is a notepad on the side of your desk with your passwords written down inside it.
That you take home with you every night.
That you take home with you and you know where it is. Because if you have someone in your house looking at that notepad that you don't want looking at that notepad, you have a bigger problem. Call 911.
unfortunately, while I agree with him on that, cybersecurity best practices right now do say use a password manager like LastPass or Keeper. But then you run into things like LastPass had their entire database broken into twice.
Yes.
So, it's really like, if you're going to use a password manager, you've got to be able to trust the company.
Yes.
And it can be very convenient, especially like for me, I use 6, 7 computers and one at work. It can be very convenient to store them in the cloud and trust Microsoft or Chrome to manage those passwords. But I think it's always best to keep them either in your head or on a piece of paper.
Yes.
So it's raining and pouring here at ACT Computers, but we really enjoyed this time with you. Tune in for us next Friday. Same bat time, same bat place. Thank you very much.
Take care.